Hey, everybody. Welcome to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry podcast, hosted by yours truly, Dave Procida. The purpose of the podcast is to empower people who are in commercial construction, everybody from owner to intern, to understand that there's a lot of different paths in the business. And by virtue of listening to people who have been there, as well as podcasts by me personally, you'll have a better understanding of how to get where you want to go. Today, I'm ecstatic about having a real good old friend, a person I worked with, a woman in construction, and we're going to get into that in detail. Beatriz Banchs, who is the vice president of the LA operation of Component Assembly System. Beatriz, thanks so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
So Beatriz and I worked together when I was with Component, and I got to say that she is one of fact-based information, no nonsense, zero tolerance for BS, but nonetheless, a woman in a male-dominated industry. B, what got you into commercial construction?
Well, I like to think about it as being just serendipity. I am from Venezuela. I am a civil engineer from Venezuela, and after working there for a year and a half, I wanted to come to the U.S. And just to pursue a master's, and mainly to also experience life outside of home, where culturally things can be very tight. And I got at the time, the government had a program, a beautiful program, which every year you went through a test, some sort of SAT test, and they would offer financial assistance to study anywhere you wanted, as long as you were accepted. And depending on your performance, it could actually just be a scholarship. And the purpose was to educate people in the best places around the world so that they could come back home and help continue the development of the country. So I got accepted into, I took the test and was listed as one of the participants for the following year. And I came to Purdue University and I pursue a master's in construction management. So
you were, in a sense, sponsored by the government of Venezuela in hopes that you would get smart about construction or whatever you were studying and bring it back home. So
correct.
we're going to fast forward and then we'll hit the middle. Fast forwarding right now, you've been here for several years, and we'll talk about that. You also have a group in Venezuela, I believe. Tell us about how that works, because in a sense, you did bring a lot of opportunity back to Venezuela, even though you're not there.
Yes, that's actually true. Fast forward, there was a point where I chose to go back home because, as I said, I came to the US more for personal experience. I never saw myself being an immigrant at the time. So I went back home, and through engineering peers there, I realized that I really enjoyed the dynamics and fast-paced world of the construction industry. And I proposed to hire and train a team there that could assist with projects that are being worked on here in the US. And it's been 20 years since that first started. So my connection with Venezuela is very current.
So, B, how many staff do you have in Venezuela?
It's seven people.
So, in essence, you have an estimating pool for
For the
lack of.
for the most part, the focus is pre-construction, but they also assist on, pricing changes for projects that are ongoing, or preparing files and for the execution of the projects.
So, in order for the audience to understand their role, tell us about component assembly systems. Basically the structure, how it's kind of set up, and how you navigate your team through that.
Well, component assembly systems is one of the top interior construction in the US, and we have several offices. I originally worked for Component in the New York office, which is where the headquarters are. So for the longest time, the main focus was New York projects. So basically, we coordinate and share drawings, which 20 years ago was more of a thought process than it is today. And work gets sent back and forth, as needed. And there is a lead person locally that takes that information back and presents it.
So I was long a proponent of specialization, and wherever I go, I that kind of follows me. But with component, what you represent is a consistent nucleus of how to get from point A to point B, deliver a product to the local divisions, right? And it eliminates their need to go and do what you've already done. And I think that is a great service. It's a great value. So let's talk about you. You started, I guess, John Rappaport, who was one of the principal owners, met you, or you met John through a friend. Explain how that happened.
Well, I was finishing my master's, and actually towards the end of the master, I got married, and we were planning on moving to New York City. With the type of visa that we had an opportunity to stay in the US. It was called at the time practical training, for another 18 months to gather more experience before heading back home. So when job fairs for construction started at Purdue, at the time, companies were not geared or did not have the understanding of what it took to hire non-US citizens. So on the other hand, my husband was doing an MBA, which was the opposite situation in terms of visas. So he had a job offer in New York City, and that's when I turned around and started looking for, what opportunities could I find in New York City. And a friend of mine from Purdue basically gave me Component Assembly's brochure. She had been interviewed by John Rappaport, and I just called him. And when we first spoke, he's like, "Oh, when are you moving? In July? Okay, we'll talk in July." But I had limitations with my visa. I had to have a job offer earlier than that. So I went to New York. We scheduled a trip to New York. And that's where I met John. And he basically, gave me an offer the next day, which I accepted 24 years ago.
Wow. When you think about it, you have a great career right now. And think about it, you run your own office in LA. You're involved with many different divisions of the company. And you got there because you wanted to come to the US to learn. You were sponsored by the Venezuelan government. You did your master's at Purdue. You had a friend who met John. Your husband got a job in New York. You wanted to go to New York, and that's how you ended up here. I mean, any one of those things don't happen, we're not talking. Isn't that crazy? So you've been with Component for 24 years now. There was a very, very special day. I'm not sure exactly when it was. I think you know what I'm talking about. Where the day that you we'll talk about that day,
Oh, are you referring to
citizenship.
my citizenship? Yes, this long journey now, we basically are US citizens. I think it's been 7 or 8 years.
See, I don't feel so bad because I remember that day and I congratulated you, but I didn't know exactly when it was. 7 or 8 years, close enough.
Yes, yes, we're happy to be here and grateful for all the opportunities that this country has given us. Yeah.
Do you remember anything special about that day? Was it a fait accompli, or was it special, or was it just kind of another day and it was a, a formality?
Oh no, it was a very special day. We went to the LA Convention Center, and they had a nice ceremony. There were people from over 100 countries, you know, just like us, receiving their citizenship. It was very nice. Hmm.
Thank goodness for immigrants. That's kind of what our country is made of, and you're certainly one of the bright ones. In a male-dominated industry, how I know we've discussed this many times. What are the challenges for a woman in a male-dominated industry?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, I don't necessarily see them as challenges. Um, I guess for me, because there is also a cultural difference. Um, I have never, lived my day to day with this awareness of, I'm different, be it via, coming from another country or just being a woman. However, that awareness has to be there. And I just, nowadays I actually use it as an opportunity to to I don't want to say educate, but it's just to change, dynamics and just be truthful to who I am and what I bring, and just uh, I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but I don't try to filter like, oh, I shouldn't say this because I'm the only woman here, or things of that nature. I actually think it's, in a way, a responsibility, to open. I'm a mother of three girls, and not that, well, the oldest is 19, not that any has expressed any interest in construction, but, you know,
See, I'm glad you said that, Beatrice, because you see it as an opportunity. First of all, you're not even from this country, so that makes you a little different. Then you come here and you're a woman in a male industry. But what I see, initially, you may be different in the room, but because you're sharp, you stand out, and I think that's great. And I think using that, you use it to your advantage, and it's good. It's not a phony thing; it's a real thing because you do what you say you're going to do. In the old the old boys network, not always does that happen. Okay, and I'm part of that, so I do understand that. I've seen you in meetings. Now, you said something about your daughters. Tell us about your family generally. How you have 3 kids?
Yeah, we have 3 kids. The oldest is 19, the youngest is 11. My Our oldest is in college. She's pursuing, at the moment, engineering. It's called engineering physics. She chose University of British Columbia. then a 16-year-old daughter who is in 10th grade, and a 6th grader. They're now, like all of us, experiencing all this online world. And just
Speaking of COVID and working from home with a family, how has that changed things for you? How have you navigated that?
I think COVID has brought, you know, different challenges to all of us. For me, because I am blessed with a very short commute, uh, it it's just easier for me to come to the office. However, there's new dynamics that I need to be aware of especially with my youngest. It's just being online all day, and there's this need for social interaction. And just the difficulties of grocery shopping and things like that have obviously affected me. But it's more that it's the impact that it has in my kids. For our oldest, it meant she had to come home earlier. And, she was so looking forward to enjoying spring in Vancouver, because she endured the winter and all this rain. And, the first sunny day, she actually, they were closing the borders. So she said, I'd rather go home. So, there was a loss there for her and for all of them.
It's
So,
it's really hard to define, and everybody's story is different. Something else we should talk about is you're in a suburb of LA. How have the wildfires impacted you?
well, the air quality at the moment is horrible. We actually this weekend uh, we didn't go out. It's not healthy. And today actually the winds are coming this way, and it bothers your eyes when you're outside. But we are not concerned of at the moment of the fires being getting to where we are. We are certainly concerned for the fires and what's going on with structures, families.
It's
And
horrible.
here in Northern California, there's many fires across the state.
Well, we want you to stay safe for sure. Guten Tag. Anyway, you'll get that in a minute. I've been in the air barrier business for 20 plus years, from when it was a single asphaltic, peel and stick, impermeable membrane to what it is today. It's a big part of the building science. The business has changed. There are several manufacturers in it, but I choose today to deal with Dorkin, a German based company. Not only are they competitively priced, their technical support is great, and mainly I can always count them. They're there when I need them, in the field or during the bid. The biggest single differentiator between Dorkin and other manufacturers is they have a simple system. An example, on a previous job, we have 5 different products to do the same thing that Dorkin gives me with 2 products. So Dorkin, I thank you for that. My workers thank you. My clients thank you. I would urge you to check Dorkin out at their website, dorken.com. That's dorken.com. Earlier you mentioned, and you kind of snickered a little bit about the old days when you had to transfer drawings and everything else, right? How has technology impacted your ability to do what you do?
I think that the technology was always there 20 years ago. I think that nowadays um, that technology is not foreign to others. It's part of your day-to-day living. I think if I look back 20 years, at that time, not every set of drawings that we received was digital. So, that was a step that needed to be done, but it needed to be done regardless because the software that we use requires digital drawings. But all of that has been streamlined nowadays. There's an abundance of information, and actually the challenge is to filter the information that is of value to us. Because as we participate more and more, in all this, at the end of the day, one of the changes, I would say, to me, it's like one of the most important changes for us as subcontractors is that, obviously not by choice, we are now, in a way, part of the design team for the projects. So we are responsible for designing our own assemblies, and that brings responsibility, and it also brings drawings that are not complete, and it just creates a different set of rules.
And an additional layer of risk. Speaking of which, I've had the good fortune to have done business on the East Coast and in the Central of America and on the West Coast where you are. And there are differences in the way business is done. How do you see it? How do you see it from your perspective, being in New York and now on the West Coast?
Uh, I think that here, I would see it like more. It's more. I don't think structured is the right word, but things that are done here slowly make it to the East Coast. That was surprising to me, because for me, moving to New York City is like, the capital of the world in a way. And then I was exposed to all this beautiful projects, world-known projects, and I'm thinking, if I can decipher this type of projects, I can just run with this with any project anywhere in the U.S. for sure. And when I first encountered California, it was an eye-opener. It was very different in the sense that, more that of us being part of the design team, the specs are followed through, the majority of the general contractors don't prepare an elaborate scope of work like they tend to do on the East Coast that basically supersedes design documents. So it was a steep learning curve. And as years go by, I see how all this way of doing things makes it to the East Coast, modeling. And so slowly but surely it gets there. But I thought New York, was the leading place, just because it's,
Just
New York City is New York City, and it's not, surprisingly.
It's funny you say that, because I found the same thing, where you go to LA and you'll be much more collaborative. New York City, give me your best number. And, even the contractors, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, even the contractors know each other, and they talk, about the industry on the West Coast. On the East Coast, it just doesn't happen. Now, building information modeling, integrated project delivery, design build, design assist. That all started on the West Coast, and it slowly made its way east. So I couldn't agree with you more. They're different markets, and I guess we keep our eye on the West Coast to see what's coming next, right? So I think you have someone, well, many, but someone in particular solidly behind you from day one at Component. You want to talk about him a little bit?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, John Rappaport was the person that I first met. I actually was interviewed by him and with John Lord. But, John Rappaport and his father, Lou Rappaport, have been, just there for me all the time. They're basically the reason why this journey has been what it has been for me. I always, looking back, it was quite interesting to bring someone, with education, but zero knowledge of the drywall, to the point where we don't use drywall, in our homes in Venezuela. So it actually allowed me to obviously, learn without any background, and also gave me the opportunity to think outside the box. It's like, why is this done like this? Could we do that? And I always had, my ideas were always welcome. And the beauty of being able to test them from early on, just being a project manager and tracking productivities and interacting with the field, it was very rewarding, and kept me going and thinking on how to do things better. It was also rewarding, the human interaction. I remember just teaching computers to one of our superintendents, who's now one of our superintendents. From, this is the on button, and he would call me during the weekends. Hey, B, remind me, how do I do this? And those are things that I truly enjoy. Creating and seeing how things work out.
Be from a perspective of an owner or a manager, right? Or somebody who's growing in the business like you. We use this, it's an overused cliche, but how do you add value? And obviously Lou and John saw value in you. They were patient enough to let you grow in the business, into the role that you are in now. And I think that's phenomenal. But I think that's just part of their makeup. You talk about the human side of things. How would you describe Lou as a manager or a person? How would you describe Lou to those that don't know him?
Wow. What would be, he is, as a person, he's just, I have so much gratitude for him. He's just someone very loyal, trusting, supportive, caring. He is really vested in you as a person.
And just for those that don't know Lou Rappaport, he's the chairman of Component, and I could say the same thing. He's a wonderful guy. He's a unique individual for sure. But see, he believed in you, and he, whether you ever grew to be as good as you are and as big of a component in component assemblies, I don't think it would ever matter to him. I think he cared about you, and that says a lot about who he is as a human being. So, and that's why they have such a rock solid business, I think, and it starts with him. Would you agree?
I agree. It has never felt as a, transaction, if you want to call it that way.
That's a good way of putting it. He's not a transactional person.
No,
That's true.
no.
True. So you've been doing this for a long time. Highlight some of the. Let's give the audience an idea of some of the jobs that you've had your fingerprints all over, from pre-construction through the sale.
Oh, well, I guess the biggest one would be One World Trade Center.
You think? One World Trade. Wow.
That was really a beautiful project to be involved in, for sure. And just to see it standing, and that brings a lot of pride. I also, I have to say that one of the things that construction brings, and especially for me when I just moved to New York City for New York, I had been to New York City as a tourist a couple of times. Never in my wildest dream did I think I was going to live there. And the beauty of working in construction for me within a city is that you get this intimate relationship with the city. You know what's coming next. You go into those job sites and I would marvel, I still do, by the views that are gifted to you just by being at a hoist on the 60th story of a building. Things of that matter. I really enjoy. Also, in New York City, the different, there's a pool of immigrants that work at the job sites, and depending on what they did, they would come from different places. And just getting to know, we had an amazing Portuguese crew, and just getting to go to their neighborhood and share, eat their food, because the foreman had an uncle that has the restaurant. So those things created such an intimate relationship with the city, and have always been fulfilling to me. And just walking around, oh, we did this, we did that.
Oh man, I hear you loud and clear. My kids get tired of me saying that I did this job, did that job. But I remember when we were, at the time I was with Component, we were just about finished One World Trade, and I'm up there in the penthouse area, and it was, like you said, it was an experience that I'll never forget. Vegas, I remember doing a presentation in LA. We were looking at getting a job out there, and I talked about how you and Vinny Natopi, our foreman, and Dave Scanamiglia were all involved with several big jobs together in Vegas. What were some of those jobs in Vegas that you worked on?
Well, the Encore.
The Encore, right?
The Encore. Planet Hollywood. There's
Cosmopolitan.
The Cosmopolitan. Yeah, it was quite a few hotel rooms. We
13,000 to be 13,000 hotels, including a couple jobs in Atlantic City. If you had to put a number on the amount of work that you've influenced through the years of component assembly, what would it be?
Secured, I don't know. If I had to guess, maybe $1 billion, but I really don't know. Yeah,
that's a low estimate, but we'll go there.
Well, for me, it's more, creating systems and things that, the new person will come in and be able to embrace. There was no language, Peter would call something one term, the other one will call something the same thing a different term. And here you have someone that needs to review all this work, that needs to experience this unique learning curve for every bid. So all that went away with a lot of resistance, but and that's what that goes back to success, just looking at all these people that were complaining about change, using it,
That is, you summed that up perfectly. And I remember I learned a lot from you, and one of the things I learned was nomenclature. You use that word all the time because we had component had multiple divisions, and each division had their own nomenclature within the same software system, which made it almost impossible for you to do your job. And that's where you say you've made some change.
Yeah, for anyone, even it just breaks the ability of collaboration. Because if you are in the receiving end of something that's done with a different nomenclature, it's just foreign to you. So yeah, that was, and actually to this day, I'm going through a different phase. Everything needs to be continually polished. So that's where I see power and
well, that's where I think you have, I use the word again, fingerprints all over the company. Because look, without systems, you can't leverage the abilities and the experience and the knowledge of all the divisions. Without leverage, it's just a bunch of silos. It's a bunch of singular divisions without that commonality, without that consistency, which I think you've added, which is again, I think bodes well for your legacy at Component Assembly Systems. Mark Twain once said, and I'm serious, it's the clothes that make the man. Naked people have little or no influence on society. The wardrobe was provided by Benchmark Clothiers, custom clothes to fit your lifestyle. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Benchmark Clothiers. And when you go there, tell them Dave sent you. Elevate, elevate, elevate. For those that don't really understand the process of an RFP, right, through the bid, describe your role there.
Oh my God. I say that for someone that is not part of this business, people are very puzzled by the effort and the investment that's required in a very, very competitive space. And sometimes you try to, blame it in the GC, our client, and the reality is that all these projects are still not ready. It's a moving target. The design team is collaborating. As feedback for pricing comes in, they have to go back and redesign. So you're working with documents that are a moving target. They're a moving target due to that, force, but also because they're not complete, there's discrepancies, there's errors, there's omissions that are, perfectly normal for the stage in which those documents are. However, here we are trying to come up with a firm number, and for obvious reasons, the owners of these projects want their costs to be not a moving target. So it is an extremely tricky exercise, but it involves, obviously doing all the quantities and putting all that in different softwares for productivity and the different ingredients of every component that we're going to build. But because of this, there's also the aspect of, and that's where I get personally involved, is where are the possible holes, possible discrepancies, things in the spec that, if we carry, we will not be competitive, but we need to say, educate our client, we have it, we don't have it. So that's basically my role when we're pursuing this major projects.
And that is a gray area because, I've been on both sides of that. And you said it, educate the client. So you look at the drawings, you find out where, as you say, the holes are. But it's important that you identify them because you need to educate the client so the other guys also understand that there's a hole, because they could be low all day long and you could say, hey, you missed that, but it doesn't help you. Right. So, and that's an ongoing battle. Do I include it? Do I not include it? But that's why you have to have management like you who have been there and done that, because you can look at a set of drawings and understand what they need to consider that they're not. So what advice would you give to a young up and coming contractor, whether it be drywall or otherwise, when they get involved in a big job, a fast moving job? I mean, what would you warn them about?
Are you referring to the pre-con side?
Yep, just going through the same process you're going through, because it's so easy to just put a number on a job and hope for the best.
My number one advice would be to always listen to complaints, especially from the field. Because if you can get away from, the negative aspect of a complaint, there's valuable information in that exchange. And that's information that could help protect yourself for the next project, or, just do further research, what else can be done. So when you have all this, which is basically experience, right? Over the years, there's always something happens on any job.
Stuff happens.
It's such a dynamic industry that whether we have included everything in our budget, but there is sometimes we encounter the GC doesn't have their A team, and the coordination is not as smooth as we planned. There's always something that might happen. So with that cumulative experience, you can take a look at a set of drawings with a different set of eyes. Things that are not necessarily that obvious. You learn how to look for things. For instance, we get a schedule. Okay, and of course you get 2-3 weeks to come up with a number for this massive project with massive amounts of documents. So you cannot be an expert on every single piece of paper that you receive. So you learn to filter. Like if I get a schedule, I'm not going to fully analyze the schedule, but there's things that are important for us. Is the facade, if it's a curtain wall facade that's by others, is that occurring ahead of us? If not, we need to add money for this interruption or this comeback, or somehow create the awareness that this is the way you're setting up the project, and this will, there will be a premium for it. So those are the things that through experience you learn to catch and check. And it can also be very tricky because this industry as a whole is like anything else, is evolving, new materials, new technology. So then as you receive new projects, you're forced to educate yourself in new materials and things of that matter.
I got to ask us, what are we doing in this business? What I'm hearing is historical data matters, experience matters, but it doesn't help unless you find a way to get that information into a usable. You said sometimes you got to take the negative out of somebody's complaint, and that's a great way of putting it. I never heard that before. But take what they're saying, forget the negative part, and use it moving forward. People don't realize if you miss a drapery pocket detail and it happens in 800 rooms, that's 800 times a miss. Who knows what that miss might be? Might be $500. Who knows? So these are the things that's why it's so important that you and your team, understand it. And I think that's where somebody like you absolutely brings huge value, because I see it all the time. Nobody has time to just dig in and focus on something so they count on you for that stuff, and that's cool. Obviously, you've done well. Component's doing amazingly well and has forever. What advice would you give a young person or even a young woman who's considering getting in construction? Why would it be better, or would it be better now getting in this business than it would have been, let's say, when you did?
Yeah, I think there's a road ahead in terms of women and participation of women in this business. But I certainly see more participation, and I also see that conversations that needed to occur are occurring. So the path for this industry being more open to women in general is there. Like for me personally, again, because I come from a different culture, I might have been exposed to things that would have been a game changer for another woman. And I remember vividly when I first was a project manager in New York City, we had weekly meetings at the job site. And I was the only woman in a long, long table. I don't know, maybe 20 some odd people, 30 people. And it was just screaming matches. And of course, there was cursing. And the majority of them would turn around to me and just apologize. And I'm like, stop apologizing and don't do it again. It's like, and I'm like, why are you only apologizing to me?
Right.
This is disrespectful for anyone. It's like, so it wasn't a big deal for me at the moment. The Beatriz of today would react differently, but that has certainly changed, and gives the opportunity for other women to join. But for me, the main driver is, do you like the business? So if you like the business and the answer is yes, follow your heart. You have value to bring. We all do. And in those awkward situations, it's actually an opportunity to, educate others, for as we continue to open this path for anyone,
But remember that they used to smoke in meetings. I mean, that's how far back it goes. So
yeah.
I think that's fantastic advice. You're a product of hard work and diligence, and of course, talent. Lots of people have talent, but you said it. If you like the business and you're curious about it, go for it. I mean, it's a great industry. It's going to continue. I think technology, it has increased exponentially, which I hope will bring younger people, men and women both, into the business. But it has changed. I think it's changed for the better. Last but not least, I asked my guests this question, and I know you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How would you define success for you in this business and personally? If you look back in 20 years and say, am I successful? What's this? What determines that for you?
Oh, wow. Um, hmm. I would say, success for me, actually, and that is something this industry gives us, is being able to, come up with ideas and seeing them, um, materialize. Success for me is looking back and, adding value, making the difference, with the teams that I've worked with. Um, Nowadays success is it's just looking at my family, and saying, um, and just being able to connect and be grateful for every experience, and just be, success equates being able to listen to a complaint and, what is this? It's the human connection. It's like, what is this person trying to say? Why, what was that about? How can I help? How can I untangle this? And how can we move forward as an industry that, is inclusive and provides opportunity for others.
I would expect nothing less from you. I'll say this: I've gotten to know you even better. I thought I knew you well. I've known you for a long time, and I got to know more today, and I appreciate that. I know our audience does. I can't tell you how much I think about you personally and as a person in the industry. This is elevate the industry, and it's interviews like this with people like you that do just that. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Thank you for this opportunity. I enjoyed it. I was hesitant. I'm like, okay. But anything that I would like to add that, it was so much fun, and it was a pleasure to work with you the time that we worked together. I truly, truly enjoyed the team that we had.
It was a good go. Thanks, B. We'll talk soon. Elevate, 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 elevate. All the music for the episodes, including our theme song Elevate, was provided by DMV producer Trey Skills. If you like what you heard, follow Trey Skills on Instagram at Trey Skills, TreySkillz. That's TreySkillz. So follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Elevate Industry. Check out my YouTube channel at Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry. Visit my website, adicorp.com, ADICORP.com. Go to LinkedIn, search for David Procida, hit connect, and follow me. Please rate, review, and comment on this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.